So I'm replacing the bridge on my double bass with this adjustable bridge, and there's not really a good video on that on YouTube. Now, I'm not a luthier, but I think I figured out some good processes to do this, so I thought I'd make a video about it. And anyway, so when you buy a bridge, there is no one-size-fits-all. The bridges don't come pre-cut to your bass. You get a blank bridge, which is a lot thicker and taller, and the feet are longer and everything, and you have to clearance the thing and cut it down to size. So what I did, now I've already started working on this one. I took the old bass off, the old bridge off, and I used it as a template. I laid it down on the new bridge, and I marked the top curve and the bottom, and just traced pencil marks on there. Then I used my recip saw to cut the top off, and once I cut the top off, so these come way too thick. They're only supposed to be 6 millimeters thick, right here along this edge. So what I did, I used my drill with I think this is a 3-inch sanding disc. You can get those off Amazon or eBay. This is 80 grit, and it worked really well. Did the job in less than 20 minutes. I was able to profile this whole thing, which I thought it was going to take a couple hours, so that was really a lot quicker than I anticipated. When you do this, you're only supposed to do one side. The back side of the bridge down here that is down by the tailpiece, that's supposed to be perpendicular 90 degrees to the soundboard, and so you only work on one side, and that'd be this side. So I got this leading edge down to 6 millimeters just by working it along this edge right here. Once I had this down to 6 mil, I just used this and profiled the whole rest of the thing to get a good flat surface. And I was amazed at, you always want to keep the sanding disc moving. You never want to focus on one spot or you'll create a huge divot that'll be hard to work out later. So anyway, I just tried to keep it uniform, and it did a really good job keeping it nice and straight. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. Anyway, so that only took like 20 minutes, and this tool worked really well for that. Then for these bottom feet, I traced that pencil mark on there. I did the same thing right here, and I just worked it down, and now that left me a pretty good surface here, but it's not perfect. I'm going to have to clearance these onto the soundboard to get the perfectly correct profile. So I'm getting ready to do that, and whenever you take the strings loose to get this bridge out, there's a dowel rod in here that runs from the top soundboard to the bottom, or front to back, however you look at it, and it's only held in by the tension of these strings. So when you bust these strings loose, if you pick the instrument up, you can drop that dowel out of place, and then it would be really difficult to get back into place. So I made a temporary bridge that is taller than the actual bridge, so that way I can put this in there, put the strings on top, get tension, so that I know that dowel rod's not going to fall out of place. And all I did here was I create a little bit of a curve on a piece of plywood, and I put this towel underneath it to keep it in place. And yeah, we'll look at that now. It works pretty well. Okay, I have the temporary bridge put in place. The strings aren't real tight, just tight enough to put some downward pressure on that dowel to keep it from popping out. Notice that the temporary bridge is down lower than it would normally be, and that's to give me room to work here. Strings are up out of the way. And I have this sandpaper wedged underneath the bridge on this side, so that's holding it in place, taped down. This is like 80 or 100 grit sandpaper, can't remember which, pretty coarse. So I've been doing this for like 20 minutes now, and I was pretty concerned as to whether or not this would actually work. I've tried using this method before for fitting small wood pieces together, and it's so easy to end up rounding the edges on whatever you're working on, because their natural tendency as you're pulling and pushing is to rock it back and forth. I'm exaggerating that here, but just a minute amount of rocking back and forth will end up rounding the edges and giving you a convex shape on the bottom. Now, I've been checking this every 3 or 4 minutes, and it's coming along really, really nice. If you can see here on the bottom side, I covered this in pencil. I penciled all across both sides, and there is still just one little area where the pencil mark is still remaining. It's still just a little high there. But I'm taking this sandpaper and folding it up and checking it, so I can make sure it's good. Another thing you have to pay close attention to is that your sandpaper is all the way down flat with the soundboard. There's a little bit of difference between the height of the soundboard on this side of the F-hole and on this side, just because the bridge pushes right here. It's kind of warped that a little bit. So at first I didn't have this little slot torn in the sandpaper, so I didn't catch it. There's a little bit of a ripple here, so every time I was sliding up, I was running the bridge up onto that ripple, and that's where that high spot came from, back before I even put the pencil mark on it to see what I was doing. So you have to pay super close attention that the sandpaper is all the way down flat and there's not a gap. Otherwise you'll end up doing that. Alright, so all in all it took about 30 minutes of sanding these feet. I finally got them straight, and I just cut notches for the strings. I did that using the old bridge as a template, and I just put a little nick with my pocket knife, and then I ran the file at a 45 just a little bit. They say the notch is not supposed to be any more than half of the string diameter, but I'm thinking I'm going to have to probably fine-tune each of the string heights a little bit, so I might have to recess those down further and then go back across the top with the sander and bring it back down to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so I'm installing the bridge now. They say you're supposed to lube the notches with graphite from a pencil, and I might try that on the string too. Bridge is installed, and I tuned the base up. I believe you're supposed to check the height on these with the base tuned. That way correct amount of tension is applied and you have the proper amount of compression and everything going on. So the reason I installed this adjustable bridge is because I wanted to be able to play higher up on the fingerboard, and I had 16 millimeters over on the G side of clearance between the string and the fingerboard, and that's way too high to be able to play much of anything. I have heard that soloists like to play around 5 millimeters on the G string, and so that's what I'm going to set this for when the adjusters are threaded all the way down like they are now. And right now I've got 9 millimeters. It's still 7 millimeters lower than it was to begin with, but so I need to drop this thing down 4 more millimeters. And I'm going to do that for every string. Now I've measured across here already. It's pretty much 9 or 10 all the way until here. And on the E string I've got 6, so I'll just have to file that one down a little bit. So I'm just going to loosen the strings, and I'll do this one by one. And I'm just going to use the file. Pop the string out of the notch. I'm just going to use the file and file down until I get to about 5 millimeters. And then once I've filed all the way down, I'll take the bridge back out and use the sander and just reprofile the top. Okay, so using the file seemed like a whole lot of work, so I tried just my pocket knife, and then I figured this out. I folded a piece of sandpaper over and running this through. Okay, I got the G string set to 4 millimeters. It's still not buzzing at 4 millimeters, so I might even notch these down a little bit lower. I mean, I guess you could really put the strings as low as you can possibly play them without there being any buzzing or rattling of the string up against the fingerboard. So I'm working on the D string now. Something I just realized I probably should be doing every time is lubing up the back side of that string with graphite, so that as I'm tuning this up, I'm not putting all that strain right there. The string's able to slide freely in that notch. Alright, so there's the profiles that I ended up cutting. So that means not only am I going to have to sand down to the tops of these notches that I just cut, but then I'll also have to reprofile the new top edge to 6mm, which means I'll also have to sand down the whole thing a little bit more. So that means more sanding, but I think it'll be worth the effort. I drew a line so I'd have a reference to sand down to. Okay, I got it sanded down, but I came across an interesting problem. So all of these are set at 4mm right now, right here. And if you can see in the video, I think you can, this is not really a symmetrical curve. The A string is up a little higher than the D, so when I push down on the D string way up here and go to bow, I can't get on that D string without hitting either the G or the A or both of them. So that means I'm going to have to drop the G and the A in relation to the A, or I'm sorry, I have to drop the G and the A in relation to the D so I can play that thing. Okay, so I sanded those notches down a little further. What I ended up with was I'm running 4, 5, 4, 5, and it's enough clearance to I can play all the strings just fine. The issue I had though is that I ended up sanding down a lot further than I wanted to, so now I'm just going to have to run the adjusters up a little bit higher. Not a big deal. So now the only thing left to do is learn how to play this thing.